somebody posted more shark dick girls and post waifu. It's a party.
I was already looking at it, and I was like, why is there so much shark porn?
What the fuck is up? And the mics are hot, the stream is live. I don't want a 9 to 5, but this YouTube shit's in a downward spiral. Hey, don't worry, we're never going viral. They say stream like nobody's watching. I got news for you, brother. Fucking nobody's watching. Oh, you said you wanted viewers? Then just already got them. Oh, you said you wanted streamers? Mixer already bought them. And if you hate them, you swat them. But if you don't get killed by cops, beat by bots, or even male and female thoughts, you might just fuck around and land on top. That is, maybe, if you work harder than bro ops.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the clubfradio.wave podcast, where my first question is, how many other podcasts do you listen to? I don't even really listen to any podcasts. I enjoy doing our podcast. I'm glad we brought it back, but it's more because I enjoy having conversations with my friends and sharing them with you guys. So that's an immediate question I have is the Bro Op podcast the only podcast you listen to, or do you have other podcasts that you listen to as well? Chase, do you listen to any podcasts?
No, I really don't. I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube that I guess could be boiled down to a podcast. Like I think Good Mythical Morning, basically a podcast.
Yeah, that's my thing, is that like if we keep doing this for a long time, I think that it can kind of just transcend what labels something as a podcast. Like I feel like the YouTube version of it could have us both on camera, like having a conversation about something. I feel like it could even be kind of close to like a video essay, but like casual. And that's kind of the mindset that I had when I was coming up with potential upcoming topics. The topic that we discussed for today was games that were canceled and never came out. Now, this is something that you will see on websites like Unseen64. You will see it mentioned on trivia videos like Did You Know Gaming. And it's something that it stays on my mind a lot because especially whenever it's a game that I'm hyped for and then it goes away and is never released, I wind up really kind of like wondering what that game could have been like. And, you know, Chase and I used to spend an awful lot of time kind of just talking about hypothetical video games and how we would like it to be if this happened. So that's kind of what we're going to discuss today. So don't forget that if you're a Patreon patron at the Undead Host here, you can listen to these live. We try to make sure everybody knows when they're being recorded. And you can also submit an ad for us to read live on the podcast. And if that is stupid, nobody wants to do it, then we'll think of some other cool benefit to do. But until then
I'll just sing the cat dog theme.
There we go. All right. The first thing that I really want to talk about, because there's a lot of like canceled games that I feel like are worth discussing for this topic, is I remember a long time ago, there was a trailer for a game called Marvel Universe Online. Nothing really going on in the trailer. Like it was just a reveal of the title essentially. And then it vanished into nothingness and I never found out what happened to it. And it turned out that that game, Marvel pulled out of the licensing deal. So they just turned around and made it with a different license. They made it with the Champions tabletop license, and that's what turned into the superhero MMO Champions Online. And if you've heard Chase and I ever talk about our initial MMO experiences, or if you've listened to the MMO related podcast, you know how much we enjoyed City of Heroes. So I've tried Champions Online and I do not really like that game, but I can't help but just imagine how a Marvel themed MMO might have gone. Chase, have you ever played DC Universe Online?
Honestly, I don't know. I can't remember if I played it or just watched like Ian or Rhett or you or someone play it. Because I remember thinking, this looks awful watered down and boring. Because like, I probably haven't played it because of that. I thought it looked like shit.
Whenever that game was first announced, it has the like opening cutscene of it. And the opening cutscene is fucking dope as shit. Like it's essentially like some real like end game level, like this is where these characters could wind up at the end of like some really like lengthy progression. This is like some heavy fucking character death type shit going on. But I think the thing that I really hate about DC Universe Online isn't even a mechanical problem, and that's I feel like a lot of licensed games, especially like licensed games being put towards like the MMO formula, have to kind of justify why we are now dealing with like hundreds of thousands of new people that are important to the story. And I don't like the way they justified it, because they had Lex Luthor come back in time with like stolen superpowers and just spill them on the earth. And to me, that doesn't make me feel unique. Like, if I'm playing a superhero MMO, it's because, yeah, I do want to be a superhero alongside the superheroes I like, but I want to eventually work my way up to being their peer. And I have a hard time buying into that when I got my powers from the same, like, supernatural oil spill that gave literally everybody else their powers. Mm-hmm. I didn't really care for that much, but the funny thing is that the Marvel comic book universe has far more examples of things happening similarly that are explained better. Like, you know, take the X-Men, for example. Like, that's just the biggest, most well-known example of that just being a built-in mechanic of their rules, is that, yeah, you know, genetically there's a chance that you're going to be a mutant and you're going to have just powers out of fucking nowhere because human evolution. Or the Inhumans, which they get their powers from this, like, alien mist shit that essentially triggers some stuff that I don't really think is distinct enough from X-Men, but it's still a similar concept. And I remember when I found out that Marvel Universe Online got canceled, I just kept thinking, man, this game would be so cool if all the different like content updates were themed around like big Marvel events. Like, for example, I figured that one thing they could have happen very similarly to something they eventually did do was they eventually had a big story arc where Venom went back to the original planet of all the symbiotes, and you find out that there's a whole symbiote world. And it's like, yeah, I could just see people having played this game for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden there's a symbiote invasion, and now you can make a symbiote character. DC Universe Online kind of did something like that, but I don't recall exactly how it worked, but it was really skittish by comparison. Like, there was like a Green Lantern event, and you could become a Green Lantern, but it was kind of watered down versus my expectation.
Yeah, I think that's the only expansion or like DLC event type thing that I remember from that game.
I do like that it's more of an action-based MMO. Like, I get tired of RPG being the default state for MMO. And I know we're seeing a lot more MMO like looter shooters lately, but I think the term MMO is being used a little generously there. Like, calling Destiny an MMO isn't really fair. Or calling like The Division an MMO isn't really fair. But other shooters that did attempt that formula kind of didn't withstand the test time. Like stuff like, I forgot the name of that massively multiplayer first-person shooter, PlanetSide. I know they did make a PlanetSide too, but it went free to play or something, and I never really heard about anything about it again. Chase, do you think that you could explain what Project Titan is?
It was supposed to be like basically replace WoW in a way, and not in the sense of like World of Warcraft 2. We're probably never going to get that as long as Warcraft's making any kind of money. So Blizzard was like, fuck it, we're going to make a new superhero themed MMO to be our successor, to like right now we've got the biggest MMO in the world, so let's just continue that steam and make another one. Fuck it, I don't remember exactly where along the lines that went downhill necessarily. I know it was in development hell for like a long time because it got announced forever ago. I couldn't tell you when, but then several years later they were just like, yeah, it's still maybe getting worked on. And then slowly over time it became Overwatch, and that's where those heroes came from. Like a lot of like Reinhardt, for example, was probably one of the tanking specs in Titan, or what Titan been, and that all the DPSs and healers. Like that game, Overwatch is a shooter, but it's got an RPG almost MMO type.
It does like archetype. It has archetypes. It has like categories that the different characters fall into. Like
I started to say it's got the Holy Trinity, but there's actually four classes.
Yeah, but I definitely see where you're coming from. So essentially, like it makes so much sense now that I know that, because if you go back and you think about City of Heroes, like that was a game where you were a newly registered hero, kind of in the vein of the Registration Act of Marvel Civil War. And you were moving to a city that was already known for how the superheroes it had, and it was known for like the real big Justice League style superheroes. So you were constantly seeing these people, and it did a pretty good job of, even though you had never heard of these people, of making you go, whoa, that's that guy. and like, I feel like it did manage that pretty well. And so I think Project Titan was supposed to be Blizzard's attempt at that. And I remember being really confused at what that game was going to be, because they were like, yeah, it's going to be this game where like you're going to have like a day job and you can work towards your day job, but you're going to do like quests at night. And I was like, what the fuck sense does that make? And then when I found out it was supposed to be a superhero MMO, I was like, oh my God, that's awesome. You have like a secret identity and everything. And I can really visualize the like major plot point characters of that being Overwatch. I have an easier time imagining them be like the story driving NPCs of that game than I really do imagining them being playable characters in a fucking arena shooter. Like,
yeah.
I think I would have enjoyed the shit out of that. But if you look into like any of the stories behind what happened to it, like they started over multiple times and they just had never quite reached a level of quality that they felt like matched their standard. And this was before a lot of the Blizzard hate came out from a lot of their recent decision making. So it does make you wonder like what was below their standards. Like what did they think wouldn't be a successful game?
Yeah, and just to be clear, like the only thing left over from Titan are like the models and stuff, and then that's where like the character like Reinhardt and Tracer and people like that came from. But then I'm sure they got more development as time went on. Like Tracer might not always had something to do with like time travel fuckery, you know, zipping, rewinding and shit.
Yeah,
just
they may
like
have
her model was just like left over and stuff.
Yeah, they may have done complete
They just didn't scrap it.
Yeah,
like let's salvage what we can out of this and push out a game, and it worked. Overwatch is insanely popular, or at least it was at one point. It's kind of dropped off now, but I mean, it's been out for 5 years, so, you know, forgive it a little bit.
I think you'll find too that a lot of these games, even if it's a game that's not mentioned on the podcast today, wind up being things that are really innovative sounding that just fall through because like they're not testing well, or they're not making enough strides in development, or they run out of money. And it's just like, fuck, I would have liked to have played that though. Like, you know, for example, another Blizzard title that we could discuss, unless you want to talk about anything else about Project Titan, is one that we've talked about for fucking years. Like well before we had a show, we used to constantly talk about what Starcraft Ghosts could have been like. And I'm going to let you lead the show on that one as well.
Okay, so when I was a kid, I don't know, when did StarCraft come out? 97, I think.
Something, yeah, I think that sounds right.
I'm going to look it up real quick while I'm kind of rambling here. But when I was a kid, I played the absolute fuck out of StarCraft. Like, it was my go-to game. Like, I'd come home from school and play, and basically until I went to bed to go to school again. Like, I played an ass load of StarCraft. And so when they announced StarCraft Ghost, it was supposed to come out on like what, the 64, some shit like that. And I was hella hyped because I was in love with that game, that whole series, or that whole like the lore of StarCraft. I loved the Protoss and the Zerg and Terran. I didn't really give a fuck about because we're Terran, whatever. But I was super hyped to play as one of these ghost units, because in StarCraft, ghosts are like spec ops people. Like they can turn invisible and they carry sniper rifles. And within StarCraft, the RTS, they would like drop nuclear. They would like strike with nukes in places. They would tell it where to go. And like I just really liked the ghosts. And then StarCraft Ghosts got announced, and it was supposed to come along, like I said, on the 64, and then that got delayed to be like, yeah, okay, we're not gonna make this, so it's going to be on the Xbox and the GameCube and PS2. That got delayed. I don't think it was ever pushed to PS3 and 360, was it? It got canceled before then, right?
Yeah, I guess not. To kind of explain where my answer is coming from, I didn't learn until today. Chase brought it up to me today that there was leaked footage of a build of this game, and like you said, it started development on N64, but the build I'm watching is an Xbox original build.
Yeah, so it's straight up on the Xbox.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever going to be ported to 360. It might have, but the build I'm currently looking at is what they got finished on Xbox Classic.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate that footage he's talking about is so generic looking. Like it just looks like a run and gun shooter, which is absolutely not what a Ghost would do.
Yeah.
Like it should have played. I think it should have been like a Splinter Cell type thing, only as you as Nova, which is the character you were going to play as, which is a female Ghost, and you could have all of her psionic abilities and like all these crazy ghost attacks. And I would have fucking loved that game.
Yeah, and that's what I think a lot of us were expecting we're expecting it to be like this stealth action game. And so far, what I'm seeing, I haven't seen that much actual combat. I'm going to skip ahead so I can take a better look at it. But yeah, I'm seeing her climbing on stuff. That looks pretty cool. She's rappelling into a base and all this shit. And let's see. I see a lot of codex style conversations. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled some inspiration from Metal Gear Solid. That would probably be where they would need to pull inspiration. But nothing, more than just your generic stuff so far. They did put a lot of care into this character design, though. Didn't they reuse this character later? Like, didn't she appear? Yeah.
She's in StarCraft 2, and I think she has several of her own books. Like she's actually a very important character in the universe now. She's like one of the strongest ghosts that's ever come along. To give a quick little more lore on ghosts, that they almost work like Spartans do in Halo. Like, they find these kids at a young age, and they find out that they have like strong like psionic abilities, and then they basically steal them and train them to be ghosts. Yeah, and she's like the most powerful one that's basically ever existed.
Yeah, and while we're talking about it, I'm sure here in a second I'll feel like an idiot because I'll remember a better example. But I think that there's like a market for like resurrecting these dead projects, because this is not even a game. Like, this isn't even a game that's out that you can play, but it's buried in all of our minds. Like, we all instantly recognize that name. So if they were to drop a trailer for a game now that says Starcraft Ghost, you wouldn't be able to hide our boners. Like, we would be interested. So like, if they wanted to, they completely resurrect a brand new development project of this concept and people would buy it. But would it be good? Would it be something that people would want to play right now? Like, if they were to come out with a PlayStation 5 StarCraft Ghost game, would you give a shit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah. Okay. Let's rewind it just a second. Jesse said earlier, Titan or whatever got canceled because it wasn't up to their standards at the time of what they considered a good game. Well, they don't have standards anymore.
Yeah, that's
unfortunately.
The thing. We're not exactly friends of Blizzard here in the Bro Op House.
Yeah, so if it got announced now, I would be very cautiously optimistic, and I would like to play it, but I would probably expect it to be shit.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest.
Oh, dude, but what if it was a phone game?
Shut the fuck up.
Wouldn't you play StarCraft Ghost Mobile Evolution? Oh, fuck. I am seeing her crouching. Oh, and she's using her psychic powers. Yeah, this game looks dope. I am surprised at how much got done on this game. Like,
I am too. Like after seeing how much they actually had there, I'm really surprised they were just like, you know what? Fuck it. Like, just throw it out, man. Like, fucking.
It's such a bummer when that happened, man. Like, we'll talk about this more. But I've watched several documentaries about like what happened to certain game studios and or like people who moved from studio to studio and had some unsuccessful projects. And it's just like, yeah, we were all really hyped for this game, and then they were like, yeah, we're not going to put it out. We're not going to release it.
Yeah.
I kind of tried to group these together so that a chunk of them would be things that I would feel comfortable talking about, and a chunk of them would be things you'd be feeling more comfortable talking about. And the next one's another one of yours, and it's Scalebound, and it's one that I haven't really. Yeah, I know you've got some pain on it, but I feel like it needs to be discussed if that's the whole point. But
this one,
I can probably even benefit from you re-explaining what it was supposed to be.
Yeah. Okay. So Scalebound, this one makes me the maddest out of everything that's ever been canceled that I've ever wanted to play. Scalebound looked fucking amazing. Like, I don't have a link to throw it in here right now, and maybe Jesse will put up some footage of it for the actual, podcast on YouTube or whatever. But it was basically Devil May Cry mixed with, like, I don't know, D&D, because you had a fucking giant dragon that would follow you around, and you could get in, like, you could ride him and get into big ass like God of War type battles, and then you could also get on the ground where you had your sword, and dude even looked a lot like he was pulled right out of Devil May Cry. He had like headphones on, like, he had his sword. He could wear this like badass dragon armor. It was every bit of down my alley, and it was supposed to come out on the Xbox One, and that's the entire reason I bought an Xbox One. It was I wanted to play Scalebound so bad, and Halo 5 had just come out, and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go ahead and get an Xbox so I can be playing Halo while I wait for Scalebound. And then it got delayed, and then it got delayed, and it got delayed, and then it got fucking canceled. And I was like, all right, fuck Microsoft literally forever. Like that, nothing has pissed me off as bad as Scalebound. I wanted that game so fucking bad.
Well, and it's funny. I think that I am gonna experience a lot of frustration while we go on these deep dives today, because Scalebound is not a game that I was excited for, but pulling the video up while you talk, I'm just sitting here looking at this gameplay demo from 2015 going, this was nearly done. Like,
yeah, I mean, it had a lot going for it. I don't know. It looked fucking amazing.
It looks really good, and I see where you're talking about, because like initially when we saw the reveal trailer, I was like, I don't know what to expect from this. It's just like kind of a cyberpunky crazy guy and his dragon. Like, I don't know for sure. But now that you're discussing all these mechanics, and now that I'm seeing the transformation armor, and I'm seeing the way the enemy's armor looks kind of like some of the best Final Fantasy armor design I've seen, like it looks like it would have been good. And I remember reading articles about how pissed off the developers were because Microsoft absolutely fucked them. Can you offer more details on that?
I don't know a whole lot about that. I know they like bought out their studio or something, and they tried to revive it or something, and then it still fell through. Like Phil, what's his name?
Phil Spencer?
Phil Swift.
Phil Xbox.
Phil, Mr. Microsoft. He was all over Twitter, like, it's still coming out. We promise the Xbox has games, and then surprised they don't. So like I don't know. I can shit on the Switch all I want, but at least it's got games,
Yeah.
But
they're in
a lot of hot water because of that shit.
Jesus Christ. This looks really cool. Like, for example, I'm not really interested in like what's the game that Shulk is from?
Xenoblade.
I'm not really interested in Xenoblade, but I will say that the really over-the-top world design interests me. And this looks like it has a lot of that, too. Like, there's, like, giant fucking trees intertwining with everything. It looks like it would be a really fun world to fly around in on this fucking dragon.
Yeah, like, it looked top-notch to me. And it also had, like, 4-player online multiplayer where you were just basically a different color of that guy, and you had your own dragon, and it was a different color too, and they looked slightly different. Like, I was mega hyped for that game.
I remember being like, I'm not super interested in this, but if it comes out and it's got co-op, I am going to try to play it with Chase. I remember that being a thought. And watching this, it honestly, when you were about to say it's like Devil May Cry mixed with, I thought you were going to say Devil May Cry mixed with Monster Hunter, because that's what it looks like to me.
I could also see that. The reason God of War popped in my head is because as I was saying that, I was picturing him it's one of the trailers. I don't know if it's the one you're watching, but he jumps on his dragon and they fight basically this giant like kraken monster out in the sea. And I was just like, this is some shit that Kratos would fight. Only without a dragon and his bare hands, but
Fucking sad. I've got to look at something else. One that you suggested, and I think I'm going to Doom 4. I'm going to pull this one up. Oh, the top video for Doom 4 is just Doom 2016 that they have labeled Doom 4.
Well, it's funny because, I mean, Doom 2016 essentially is Doom 4 at this point. Like, I don't actually know a whole lot about the original Doom 4. All I know is the early gameplay that they showed is, like, completely fucking different than Doom 2016.
I can sort of explain this because, so if you guys are interested at all in these kinds of conversations, then you'll probably enjoy some of the documentaries of No Clip on YouTube. That was a weird noise. Edit that out. I just choked on my own throat somehow.
Deep throat in your throat, man. That's brave.
But essentially, so the No Clip documentary about Doom 2016 breaks all of this down. And, in the early days of video game narrative, people would say things. I think this is a Carmack quote, but I can't ever remember. People would say things like, story in a video game is like story in a porn. It's nice, but it's not really necessary. And I think back then that was a valid thing to say, but now it's not really. And in the original Doom, the story wasn't spelled out for you, but it was almost there in a Dark Souls sense of like you're kind of piecing together what happened just from inferences. Like, it doesn't have to be overtly told to you for you to go something fucked up on Mars. Like, Mars is haunted. So like from what I understand, Doom 1 and Doom 2, the two like fucking like 2D, 3D shooters, as best as I can even fucking call them. Those are in a continuous timeline. But from what I can tell, Doom 3 is a reinterpretation of Doom 1, despite the fact that it's numbered. And from what I watched in the documentary, Doom 4 is a sequel to Doom 3. Like, it's in like chronological order. So Doom 3 is the story of Mars getting possessed by demons, and it's very much in cliche sci-fi storytelling vein, kind of like in like old movies like Event Horizon, of science went too far. like well, we're trying to experiment with teleportation technology and we accidentally opened a door to hell. You know, sometimes you got a big old whoopsie. Like, it's very, like, I mean, that's what happens in Half-Life 1, essentially. Like, oh, we were trying to make a teleporter, we accidentally opened a door to, it's hell. It's basically hell, guys. You know, Doom 4 was meant to continue the ramifications of that event, but on Earth. It was supposed to go back to Earth. The Martian demon invasions made its way back to Earth. It was supposed to be a much more, like, narrative game. And I think at some point, the creators burnt themselves out on that, and I understand why, because the root of their entire franchise is we don't really have to break our backs trying to tell a story. Like, we just give you a really exciting, fast-paced game about violence. And so I think they went, well, fuck it, let's just go in a completely different direction. Let's just stop trying to tell this big cinematic story, and let's just give you some classic Doom. And I think that was the right call. This is probably going to be the only game we discuss that I'm just like, yeah, I'm glad that they canceled that and went into a different direction. I still would have played this game. I played Doom 3, but I didn't beat Doom 3. I beat Doom 2016.
Yeah, I didn't beat Doom. I don't know. I might have. I can't remember. I played Doom 3. I played a lot of Doom 3. I actually really liked that game because it was more like a horror game. Like there were areas in the game where you had to go through with just like your flashlight and shit. It was very Resident Evil feeling.
Yeah.
But, you know, like Jesse said, back in the day, story didn't matter all that much. Like, everything was an arcade game. Like, you know, they were either made to eat quarters or you played it on your home PC and you were just rip and tear. Like, that's all you need to know about Doom, really. And then, you know, they went back to that formula, and Doom 2016 is one of my favorite shooters I've ever played. I fucking love that game, and I am stupid hyped for Doom Eternal.
Yeah. But, you know, bringing that back to some of the games we already talked about, because I feel like we hit our stride whenever we started talking about Starcraft Ghosts. So I want to go back and talk about some of the things that I kind of fumbled over. Do you think that with something like Marvel Universe Online or Project Titan, they could have possibly said, all right, let's just take a step back and look at this from a different angle? Like, that's what they did with Project Titan. They turned it into Overwatch, but I would still like to see this MMO. Like, you know, they added the PvE to Overwatch, right? I haven't played it, have you? Or is it still coming out? Like, Overwatch 2 is supposed to be the PvE, right?
Yeah, Overwatch 2 is supposed to have the story in it. Now, there's some bullshit events that are kind of story driven in Overwatch, but I don't think you can play them whenever you want. You can only play them when they come up.
Yeah, I'm not particularly interested in this concept of Overwatch 2, where it's like you're still playing as the set characters and going through like story missions. Like, I didn't really care for it whenever it happened as a part of an event in Overwatch 1.
I think it's so dumb that they're naming it Overwatch 2. Like, it's literally the sequel, but it's technically the first time we've gotten any story, so it's almost the first game.
Yeah.
I think it should have been like a $20 or $30 DLC or expansion pack. Don't even call it DLC. Flat out call it an expansion pack for Overwatch.
Yeah.
And make it have some sub name like Overwatch Origins or some shit.
It also makes the entirety of Overwatch 1, because it does have a story as a framing device for the multiplayer. So it makes the entirety of Overwatch 1 seem like it happened in the span of a week, because like, you know, the trailer for Overwatch 2 is kind of like, is Overwatch back? And it's just like, I thought the Overwatch was back already. I thought that was the whole point of Overwatch. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Meanwhile, I would still like to see this Marvel MMO, but I feel like people have learned their lesson from just thinking just because they have a big franchise that they can up and make a massively multiplayer online game. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, we'll fucking find out when this Avengers game comes out, because it looks like, damn it.
It looks real bad. And they seem surprised that people think it looks real bad. It's like they spent all their money on graphics and not enough on like the actual intrigue of the concept. Like, this doesn't look fun at all.
Yeah, it's definitely a GameFly game for me.
Yep. All right. Well, jumping into one that I personally really want to talk about quite a bit is Fez 2. I am going to pull up some gameplay for the podcasting, and I'm going to skip ahead. All right. Chase, what's the name of the documentary that talks about the developer of this game as well as several other games?
Indie Dev, the movie.
Indie Dev, the movie? Or Indie Game, the movie?
Indie Game. That's what it is. Indie Game.
Okay. Indie Game, the movie is a really good documentary about indie developers developing their own video game. And one of the developers that's focused on in this documentary is a gentleman by the name of Phil Fish, who developed Fez. And if you've never played Fez, and if you have never learned about Phil Fish, consider yourself lucky, because it's just a bunch of fucking like hard to read bullshit, because Fez is a delightful game, and it's a very I kind of hate even phrasing the words puzzle game with my mouth, because I hate most puzzle games. Oftentimes when I play a puzzle game, I just feel stupid and I get nauseated from going around the same room forever trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do next. But Fez is by far my favorite puzzle game of all time, because Fez is a game where it's 2D, but you gain the ability to rotate the world in 3D, but after you've rotated it 90 degrees, it becomes 2D again. So it is very like MC Escher in the way that like the space defies physical rules. Like, there is no depth in Fez. Like, there is a 3D environment, but after you finished rotating, it returns to being physically two-dimensional. So if there were a bunch of platforms that were not arranged in a line, but you turn your camera so that they are, congratulations, that is one road. Now, for the hard part to swallow about this story is that the developer is just a spurg. Just like, and I say that with all love for like all of the people that I've talked to about their mental health and things like this. But here's a gentleman who can't wrap his mind around what is and is not appropriate behavior. And I can relate. That's why I feel bad for this guy. In a lot of people that have finished watching the documentary hate Phil Fish. I feel so bad for him because I've been there. I've been there every step of the way, not knowing how to behave. The problem is that Phil's not just awkward. He's an asshole. Yeah. Like, why don't you talk about some of it?
All I really know about the guy is from watching Indie Game, which is fantastic, by the way. If anyone listening to this has not seen it, I highly recommend it. It's about Super Meat Boy, Fez, and Braid. Is that what this game's called?
Braid's excellent. And yeah, the guy who developed Braid talks on there.
Yeah, it's about those three games and their devs, and it is fantastic. And like, even in some documentaries, there has to be basically a villain.
And he's definitely typified as the villain.
Yeah. I was going to give an example of King of Kong. Yeah. Like, Billy Mitchell is by far the villain in that movie, you know.
Yeah.
But Phil Fish is the villain of this one, and it's because like he was working with one other guy on Fez, and
something
throughout the movie. Yeah, throughout the movie, you slowly see that other guy just sort of slowly back off and be like, "This guy's crazy. Like, I want out." And then it's like a bad band breakup, and then that guy gets out, and I think he finishes Fez by himself, or maybe the guy helped finish Fez and was just like, "Look, I want my royalties. I'd never want to talk to you again," because he's such a dickhead throughout the whole damn thing. Now, you know, neither one of us know him personally. Maybe he's not always like that. Maybe he was under a lot of stress getting the game done. Who the fuck knows? But on camera in that movie, he's the biggest asshole you've ever seen. Like, the whole time you're just like, fuck this guy and fuck his game. Like, I haven't played Fez, but I've watched Jesse play it a lot, and it does look legitimately fun. But after watching that, I was like, no, fuck Fez.
Yeah, fucking Fez is a gorgeous game. I love, you know me, I love like retro style pixel art, and it's beautiful and it's fun, and the hidden areas in that game are really cool. But to me, it's almost like an Ender's Game level like problem, because anybody who enjoys the book Ender's Game probably knows that the author of that wound up being an enormous vocal homophobe. And if you are not an enormous vocal homophobe, you at some point have made a decision about how to feel about Orson Scott Card if you're a fan of Ender's Game. And if you're like me, you can go, I don't support him, and his book is not about homophobia, so I still like that book. And that's kind of where I am on Fez. Like, Fez has nothing to do with all of the rude things that Phil Fish said. But unfortunately, I'm never going to be able to forget the fact that when that Asian guy asked him at a con about Asian video games, he was like, yeah, they all fucking suck, and you guys need to learn how to make games.
Yeah, says the dude that's made one fucking indie game that got lucky and it took off. like after Fez, he was so fucking full of himself.
Yeah,
like, he was like the god developer in his mind.
It seems like a trend. Like I've seen that with a lot of other documentaries I've watched about like similar things, like kickstarted technology. I watched one about I think it was about 3D printing. Yeah, it was about 3D printing.
I've seen that one. It's on Netflix.
And the guy who was originally at the forefront of it just dicked over all of his friends and sold the company. And he was like, yeah, you know, sometimes these are the things you got to do, but they've promised me I'm going to stay a vice president in my company, and they immediately fired him. It's just like, these are things that I honestly think about a lot because, you know, and this is why I like our podcast, because when we get off topic, it still feels on topic. Chase and I bicker a lot about the creative process of our channel, and I'm constantly like, just don't turn into Phil Fish. Because I think what happens to these guys is they take being proud of the effort they put into it too far, and they instead turn it into, well, I deserve to be respected higher than the degree of like effort I've even put into this. And like I feel like, you know, Fez started out as a 2-person project, and then Phil got a big fucking head about it, and unjustly so, and it went shit from there. And we haven't even really gotten to the cancellation part, which is there was gonna be a Fez 2, and this motherfucker could not stop getting into Twitter fights. I'm gonna try to find out why he even did it.
I had actually forgotten why Fez 2 got canceled, but now I kind of remember.
All right, you tell me, and I'm gonna look over it.
Well, no, I just kind of remember the Twitter stuff. Like, I don't know exactly what he got in trouble with, but I do recall him being an absolute just dick on Twitter, or at least somewhere in an interview or something.
So what I'm seeing, hold on, it was a reaction to an interview. Shortly before the announcement, an argument between Fish and writer Marcus Beer broke out on Twitter in response to Beer's comments during a recent episode of Game Trailers Invisible Walls. During the episode, Beer touched on the media's recent efforts to reach out to indie developers during Xbox One's reversal on indie self-publishing, particularly Jonathan Blow and Fish, who decided to go bananas and bitch and moan about press questions. So the guy was complaining about how Fish would complain about press questions. Gents, Beer said, you were the guys who did Indie Game the movie, and some of you looked relatively normal in it, and one of you looked like a total tosspot in it. But you can't have it both ways. You're successful game designers. You're indie game designers. Hurrah. Good for you, you fucking hipsters. And he literally immediately tweeted, I'm done. Fez 2 is canceled. Goodbye. What a dickhead. Like, don't get me wrong, what that guy said was dickheaded, but no matter who you are, people, and I'm not even talking about the worthless people, I'm talking about people that you respect. No matter what you do, people are going to shit on what you do. Like, and that's why I feel so bad for him. Most people don't, but I do, because I'm just like, God damn, he needs help. He needs coping mechanisms. He needs mental help. He needs to be able to dismiss criticism. And instead, he took his ball and he went home, and we didn't get Fez 2.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
And did he have a Kickstarter going for it too? I don't remember.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that was the case, because he had a publisher. Polytron was his publisher. Nope, Polytron was his developer. I don't know, because somebody else is running the Polytron Twitter. Like, this article has a Polytron tweet that's like, it's with a heavy heart that we announced Fez 2 has been canceled, which is not what he said. What he said was, I fucking hate this industry. I'm done. Fez 2 is canceled. Goodbye. Know this. Again, I brought this up a long time ago about how, I have made friends through the community with a lot of different people of a lot of different mindsets, of a lot of different obstacles and a lot of different things. And so a while back, I was looking at subreddits related to like my conditions, like related to my like anxiety disorder, and kind of through the rabbit hole wound up on some other ones. And, you got people who will be able to take the piss and jab at each other about not really having an understanding of social norms, and it's okay. And they'll even make memes about it, like just calling each other like dickheaded names because we're all kind of in this together. But here's the guy that has no support network. Like here's the guy that has no idea how weird he's being, and it just blows to see. And I feel like he could have done even greater thing if he had some people in his life that would shut him down. I feel like he got such a big head that he wouldn't let anybody shut him down, and then he shut himself down.
Exactly.
Star Wars Battlefront 3.
You see, I didn't really know much about this one. Like, I thought that it just got turned into the Battlefront we have now.
Nope.
Like, kind of the reboot thing.
All right, so I'm going to pull up some pre-release gameplay
because I never played any of the Battlefront games, the older ones.
All right,
so I didn't know really much about them at all.
Let me walk you through it. So, Star Wars Battlefront was always developed independently from the Battlefield games. I think it's just a tangential similarity that they have battle in the name, but they're both open world military team-based military shooters. So the Battlefield games are meant to be semi-realistic open world team-based military shooters with vehicles, and the Battlefront games were the same, but they were set in these like cinematic set pieces where you could hop in a fucking X-Wing and you could fly around like the fucking Death Star and shit, and there would be like objectives that would be similar to the movies and stuff. And the thing is that whenever the buyout happened of like Star Wars properties and everything got moved around and EA DICE got their hands on it, that seemed to make sense. Like that seemed to be like, oh, Battlefront 3 is saved. It's going to come out because those guys know how to make those games. But instead they started development over. Like the video I have on the, I'm going to actually wind it back. The video that I'm going to provide in the video version of the podcast, and if you're listening to this on Spotify, literally just look up Star Wars Battlefront 3 pre-release gameplay. So in the versions of Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 that were released, it's all just kind of one level. You're either in space or you're on the ground. There's no in between. And in this, like, there's this enormous battle where this guy's on the ground. He gets in a fucking Sith, like, small fighter shit, and he... fighter ship, and he literally goes up into space like we do in No Man's Sky, and he joins the space battle from there. And it's all seamless, like he flew that way himself between these two areas, and then he flies into an enemy ship through a force field, and it's super fucking cool. Now, the problem is that when Star Wars Battlefront, the reboot game, came out, when you get in a vehicle, it's almost like an on-rails shooter. It's not remotely the same. Like you don't find a vehicle and get in it. You have to like call it in like a kill streak, and you're only fighting against other vehicles. Like you can barely interact with the land. So instead of giving an upgrade to the franchise, they literally just built a new game with less features. And then something else that I'm looking at in this video is this cutscene of like this Jedi who uses the Force to fight with martial arts instead of a lightsaber. So like they had all this like a original story that they were going to try to put in, and it never happened. So like this was a game that was like very nearly done. Like they had a lot of really interesting mechanical stuff in it, and instead we got a game that looked a lot better but was mechanically simpler by large degrees.
Yeah, and full of microtransactions,
and full of fucking to the point that it pissed off so many goddamn people.
I think it's pretty fixed these days, but they're never gonna recover. You know, like they're never gonna fully recover because it's been out for a long time now.
Well, I know that. Okay, so a good friend of mine, Scott. I've talked about him in the D&D podcasts. He is the kind of person that he is so in love with certain franchises, and I know you guys have friends that are like this too. He's so in love with certain franchises that even though he is disappointed or wary of a game not being up to snuff, he'll be like, well, of course I'm going to play it. It's Star Wars. And so he played it and he defended it. But when Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out, he was just like, yeah, Battlefront 1 was really disappointing. Battlefront 2 does look better, but I'm going to be wary of it. And that to me was the most heartbreaking part, because he was like, die hard, like, I don't care, I'm gonna play this. And then later on was just like, yeah, they really fucked that up.
Yeah, I played in the beta for it or something. Or maybe it was the first game. Maybe I haven't even touched the second one. I can't fucking remember. But I played one of them. And like, it was fun in the beta to play. I think me and you and Rhett played.
Yeah.
And like, that was fun, but not enough to buy it.
Yeah. I have oftentimes been like, do I want to bite the bullet and go play Battlefront 2? But to be real, I think we have a better chance of waiting until there's an EA DICE Battlefront 3 that might even be close to as good as the original one was going to be.
Yeah, maybe.
God, this cutscene has like an old Luke in it. Am I even looking at this right? Like, it's like, this was even before the new Star Wars movies, and he like looks spooky as shit. Maybe that's not Luke. If I find out that's not Luke, I'll edit this out and make myself not look as stupid.
Impossible.
That might not be Luke, but he kind of does look like him. That may have just been a fucking coincidence. Artemis in chat says $60 is honestly asking too much for a lot of video games nowadays. Well, the problem is that used to be a very reasonable asking price for the default amount of game you would get. And now it seems like you get much less game. And what to me started that were the Call of Duty games, because it used to be that these multiplayer games weren't designed with multiplayer in mind. They were designed with single player in mind and multiplayer as an additional bonus. Like almost every game that came out on console had a single player campaign as the primary focus and multiplayer as the icing on the cake. And it got to the point to where I remember getting really irritated with my friends because I would be like, yeah, I still haven't even beaten the campaign for Call of Duty. And they'd be like, why have you even started? I don't play the main campaign of Call of Duty. And I was just like, that's over half of the game you bought. Like, why are you not playing that? And the developers picked up on that and they were like, well, if you're not going to fucking play it, we're not going to develop it and we're going to charge you the same amount of money.
Yeah, well, we ain't going to put it in. Fuck y'all.
And that's exactly what they started doing.
I know Artemis wasn't here when we were talking about this, but it's today's gaming industry has changed to the point, like we were saying, Blizzard has gotten to the point where they're just like, fuck it, put it out, we'll fix it later, maybe.
Yeah.
And like so many other games and developers are like that, like Destiny, for example. Both times they've put out a game, Destiny 1 and 2 has been, fuck it, put it out, we'll fix it later. And like, I'll give them credit where credit's due. They fixed Destiny 1. I didn't play it anymore by then. It was too damn late. But they fixed the first game and they've basically fixed the second game from what I understand. But like, if you think I'm going to buy Destiny 3 right out the gate, Bungie, you can go fuck yourselves. You've had your chance twice. Like, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. So, like, I think that the chances of me buying another Battlefront game are sincerely soured, because I think that the average Joe does not keep up with game development. Or I might be wrong. Like, the average Joe might be shifting more towards the nerd spectrum where we are. But I've met so many people who are just like, yeah, dude, Battlefront is dope. And I'll just be like, yeah, well, it just doesn't look nearly as good as the original beta footage had it looking. And they're like, oh, well, I've never seen that. It's just like, okay. So your expectations weren't set high because you don't keep up with shit for dick. You just heard Star Wars pre-ordered and played what you got. Chase, tell me about the Legacy of Kain games.
Okay, now these are some games that I absolutely love. I've actually never finished a Soul Reaver game, but I have beat Blood Omen 2 a million times. I fucking love that game, and I almost beat Legacy of Kain Defiance, but that game is very hard. Or it was when it came out and I was a kid, or sort of a kid. I think I was like 14, 15 when that game came out. I don't remember. But I love those games. I love everything about Kain, and I love everything about Raziel, which is his basically a rival throughout the series. And until we were ready to do this podcast, I had never even fucking heard of Dead Sun. And I had to look it up at work today because Jesse sent me the list of shit we were going to talk about tonight. And I was just like, Legacy of Kain Dead Sun, what the fuck is this? I got to looking at it and I was just like, I'm fucking glad this didn't come out. Like you don't even play as Kain or Raziel in that game. You play as some new nobody, and the game had like a multiplayer aspect of it, which they actually salvaged it and turned it into Nosgoth, which I tried Raiden was horrible. The game was absolute shit.
I didn't know that. I'm sitting here watching it now, and I am literally sitting here going, so where the fuck is the Soul Reaver guy? Where's the vampire guy? All I see is this like really black man and a titty hanging out. Just like I am literally just like, what's Titty Bitch's story? Who are you?
Yeah, when I was looking it up on Wikipedia today, I got about as far as Kane and Raziel are not in this game. You play as, and I stopped reading. I was just like, no, not interested. I'm glad it didn't come out. You don't just do that.
Here's the thing. It's not unheard of to have a sequel to a main series game and the protagonist be like a new character, obviously. But why am I sitting here watching so much footage of a game that's continuing an existing franchise and I haven't seen anything from the original franchise yet?
Yeah. Like it'd be different. Like a good example of that is I lost the name of the game right then. Where the guy Prototype. Prototype 2, you play as somebody completely different, but I can't remember the main character's name in the first one, but he's the bad guy in the second one.
You want to know what's funny is I think his name's Alex Mercer, but I had to second guess myself because I was like, no, that's a voice actor. But no, Matt Mercer is a voice actor.
Yeah, that's Matt Mercer. Yeah, it is Alex Mercer though. But yeah, he's like the main bad guy in the second one. You're trying to get after him. But like that kind of works out, and that's even kind of how Blood Omen and Soul Reaver separated into two different games. Like Blood Omen 1 played kind of like I want to compare it to like Diablo. Like it was like a top-down dungeon crawler type shit. Yeah. And then Blood Omen 2 was completely fucking different. It was like an over-the-shoulder, like third-person, like action RPG nearly, and it was totally different. And in that game, I don't think you're introduced to Raziel in that game. I don't think you are. But anyway, that's for a different time. That doesn't. None of this matters.
None of this fucking matters. I do remember like the very first time I ever even heard of Soul Reaver though was my mom had a friend. I think she was like we used to have money, so she might have been the fucking housekeeper. I don't even know. But we were over at her place for whatever reason for a short moment, and her kids were playing video games, and I normally played video games with the daughter, and she wanted to play like fucking Rugrats, and I didn't have a PlayStation 1, and she played Rugrats on PlayStation 1. And the brother was using the PlayStation, and he was playing Soul Reaver, and I was just trying to talk to him about it, and he was just being your typical dickhead teenager that just wouldn't talk. But it looked really fucking cool. And now that I've finally gotten to the gameplay in this video, the gameplay in the video reminds me of Soul Reaver a little, but, I don't know that there's enough of a connection there. But I just remember watching him like gliding around and like gobbling people up with his big old nasty neck mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Soul Reaver and Blood Omen play basically the same for the most part.
Speaking of games that Chase didn't know about, when we were sharing this list back and forth with each other trying to plan for tonight, I suggested Star Wars 1313, and Chase said, well, didn't that already get turned into the new game? What's the name of the new Star Wars game that came out?
I can't remember. I currently have it borrowed from William because I don't like it.
Yeah.
But I cannot think of the fucking name of it. It's sitting in my living room right now. I could just go look. but it plays like Sekiro, and it's what kills that game for me. Just real quick, this has nothing to do with canceled games, but like that game has atrocious load times. Like if you die, fucking go make a sandwich because like you ain't getting back in for a little while.
I think that they definitely capitalized on the interest in a AAA Star Wars universe game by releasing that one. But this game was supposed to be about a non-Jedi character in like a seedy underworld of Coruscant. Section 1313 was supposed to be like a place just riddled with fucking crime and bounty hunter shit. And it was supposed to be an Uncharted game, essentially. Like that was the biggest comparison they would make, is that it was essentially supposed to be the mechanics of Uncharted, but in the Star Wars universe, with you playing as like a bounty hunter character in just the shittiest hole on Coruscant. And the graphics of the original like stuff that was shown off was really good. And I really like the Star Wars universe, and I don't have to be a magical space wizard in order to enjoy it. I just like sci-fi and I like space fiction in general. So I was super down. And it was just one of the many things that in the Star Wars buyout of those properties that just got ditched. Like it seems like it's just very much like a corporate buyout going, okay, which games are you nearly done on? Okay, which games are not nearly done? Those are in the trash. Like, it's just like, are you fucking serious right now? But sir, we're almost completely finished with Battlefront 3. No, DICE wants to start fresh on that with a completely inferior engine, if you guys don't mind. But this game looks hella neat. I don't think we got really more than just this little demo cutscene type thing. But I would have been down. I'm already feeling like the vibe of Uncharted and the way that like the cutscenes play out and like the dynamic between this like mentor character and you, and he's like walking around his ship with like a pistol at his hilt, and then it's got that very typical Uncharted set piece of like everything's exploding, everything in the room is moving because we're aboard a ship basically, and like it's a very like atmospheric drama situation. I could see that being enjoyable, whereas this other game is kind of more of like a Souls-like, because everybody's got to make a Souls-like now.
Yeah,
I wish I was more interested in this other Star Wars game, and this is gonna sound really stupid, but it wouldn't be a Bro Out podcast if I didn't say something really stupid at least once. I have multiple times seen footage for that game and just went, redheads can't be Jedi.
Well, something I will say that surprised me about playing that, like I played a good hour of it probably. I made it off the first planet into the second one. And what I really enjoyed about that game starting out is I thought he was going to slowly become like every Star Wars game ever that's not like main universe canon, where they're just like, oh my God, you're force sensitive. We need to train you as a Jedi immediately. Like he's in hiding on this planet and no one knows he's a Jedi until someone gets there and is just like, this motherfucker's a Jedi. And then he whips out his lightsaber and just starts fighting people, trying to be like, I was in hiding, I gotta fucking go now. And I didn't expect that at all. Like that was actually really cool to me.
Yeah. I watched a girlfriend reviews video about it and about how buggy it is, and that's been a big thing discouraging me from wanting to give it a chance. Is like,
yeah, I'm telling you, like it might be okay on PC, but on my PS Pro, the load times are fucking shit. Like William and I think Higgy both played it on a base PS4, and I can't even fucking imagine.
Yeah, yikes. The real heavy hitters of this podcast, there's two games that make me actual deep down sad about.
Yeah, we're already there for me.
Yeah, like and the first one I want to discuss is Silent Hills. You've probably heard me talk about it in other podcasts. If you've never played it or seen it for yourself, the PS3 kind of close to launch, I think, but it could have been a year, 2 years later. Who fucking knows? The PS3 had a demo that came out on it from Konami and from Kojima, and I don't know if it was revealed it was from Kojima at the time, but it was just called PT, Playable Teaser, and nobody knew what the fuck it was, and it seemed to be a new IP. It was a first-person atmospheric horror game, and if you want to get literal with your genre, it was essentially a walking simulator. And that term has been used negatively, but a lot of the walking simulators I see, it's meant to be like an atmospheric first-person experience where you're discovering the story. And it's the only walking simulator I've ever played that I like, because I've played a couple other ones. I feel like that there was one that I played that I really fucking pissed off about, where the whole concept is you're just in this like Irish village that everybody disappeared from, and that's the whole concept, is like there's nobody left. And it's like the big reveal of what happened isn't exciting in any way. But PT, the whole thing is like you wake up in the garage of this house and you can go into the house. You can't leave the house, but you can go into the house and there's people talking on the radio, and like it's stormy and the lights are kind of flickering, and I need to put on some PT gameplay for this.
I still have it installed. Well, no, I don't. That was on my different PlayStation. I think I could still download it as long as it's still on your account.
Yeah, you can. You can.
You can't add it to your account now.
But essentially, like the radio is discussing like this grisly like murder where like the dad like killed his wife and kids, and it's like really fucked up. And once you've gone through the area of the house that you can actually explore, it just loops on itself, and that's where the intrigue comes from, is you're trying to unearth like the mystery of this space that you're in, and find out what the fuck's going on, find out if maybe you're the guy that they're talking about on the radio, maybe you're next, like, and it is the best I have ever seen a horror video game executed. I don't really even fully know how to explain that. It's just, even though there are jump scares in it, the core scariness is the overall dread that I felt in that game and the sound design of that game. The first time I played it with my headphones on in the complete dark in my apartment, in the first apartment that I lived in by myself since I moved out of my hometown. If you're ever interested in seeing how this game plays and how it affected me, I actually have a solo playthrough of it on our channel. It's just really old, and I was using the PlayStation mic through the PlayStation controller wireless. So it's bad audio quality, and that's not something that I fully understood until later. The big reason why this is so disappointing is that if you beat this game, which is hard to do, like it's just meant to be like a demo, but if you beat it by fully unearthing all the mysteries and you can withstand occasionally getting killed by this freaky bitch every now and then, you get a cutscene for Silent Hills, which is essentially meant to be a continuation of the Silent Hill franchise, directed by Hideo Kojima, produced by Guillermo del Toro, and performed by Norman Reedus. And that's when all the shit went down with Kojima and Konami. And they just like imprisoned him until he was out of contract and didn't let him actually do anything valuable for the company, and then fucking fired him. And they still have the rights to that franchise. So like, we just got cock teased and ball busted as hard as we possibly could, because like, they even came out with an additional trailer for the game. Like, they came out with another gameplay teaser for what to expect from Silent Hills, and that game's never gonna come out. Fucking pisses me off. I have never felt more rewarded to be scared. Like, the only game that I've ever played that has come close to it is Resident Evil 7, because to me, Resident Evil 7 was clearly trying to capitalize on that empty place in the gaming market of just like, oh shit, this was really scary and it's not coming out. Let's make Final Fantasy 7 or fuck.
God damn.
I don't know if I can handle that. You're just walking slowly down a hallway, and every now and then you just hear Sephiroth.
Genova pops out.
I fucking love this game, dude. And like, you know, I don't remember if I've told you this yet, but one of the last times I talked to our friend Jaeger, he was like, dude, I still quote your PT video. And I was like, what? You watched that? And he was like, yeah, I watched it with a friend of mine. And every now and then we'll just Snapchat each other like some video of us slowly zooming in on something. And when it finally gets there, the text just says, what the fuck are you, little buddy? And that just makes me feel so good that my like weird reaction to that fucking sink fetus still resonates with them. Which is why I included an Easter egg to that joke in the next video that's coming out. So keep an eye out for that. But it's broken my heart that we're not going to get more of this. Like, to the point that I'm like, I know that Death Stranding is kind of like what Kojima did to get over this game, because he just went ahead and made Death Stranding with Guillermo del Toro and Norman Reedus, because it's like, fuck it, guys, we're making a game. Like, I really feel like that's how that went down.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah. The unfortunate part of Death Stranding is all I've heard about it is it's either revolutionary or the most retarded thing you've ever played. Like, there's no in between.
Yeah, I still want to play it, but everything I've watched of it makes it look really mediocre. It looks like you're trapped on one planet in No Man's Sky. Yeah,
it legit looks boring as fuck.
Yeah, I don't know if I would enjoy it, but I do want to play it. One thing I'd like to talk about, though, while we're on the topic, is that I don't normally watch stuff like Unseen 64 or Boundary Break, but there was a Boundary Break video about this game recently that was really fascinating to me, because if you're watching the video version of the podcast, he's just come around the corner and he's seen this freakish woman that's in the house. And once you've seen her, you know she's there. And sometimes as you approach her, she'll disappear. So you only get a glimpse of her and then she'll be gone. And sometimes you won't see her and then she'll just just appear in front of you and just snap your fucking neck, and it's so gruesome. The sound design's great. You can hear her snapping your neck. Like, it's real fucked up. But the thing that Boundary Break revealed about this game, a couple of things that fascinate me. Number one is that this like ghost woman is locked behind you. Like, that's why you can constantly hear her like breathing in your ear, is that no matter what way you're facing, she's behind you, like geometrically. And then the number two thing that's fascinating about this looping like building is that it actually doesn't teleport you where you think it does. Like, you'd think it teleports you when you go through this door and you observe the loop, but it actually teleports you earlier, and the house connects to like a duplicate house. And when you get to the later parts in the story, whenever it's like red maze shit, which I'll cut ahead to now, that's when they actually have an enormous full-size maze made up of these hallways. So a lot of like attention went into making this interesting little like proof of concept for a horror game. And people have tried to make games that have been similar. There are a couple of different indie projects to make games like this. Like, okay, so it was going to be called Silent Hills Indie Successor. I remember there was a game that was coming out that looked fucking good, and it never came out. But I don't know if I'll find it. This is it. I think I found it immediately. Allison Road. Okay, I want to know if that came out. Allison Road is unreleased. So, yep, they still haven't come out with the game that was supposed to be the replacement game that got canceled. So I'm just boned on this one. We should probably transition into the next one. I feel like I am very passionate about Silent Hills, but Half-Life's something that we can both kind of share.
Yeah, let's go for it.
All right, so the final game that I have planned, not necessarily the final game we'll talk about, but the final game I have planned is a game that Chase and I actually kind of debated about earlier about whether or not it was even technically canceled, especially because of recent news about it. But it's the game that's never coming out, to the point that it has been the biggest game that's never coming out meme of our lifetime, and that's Half-Life 3. Now, I've never even played Half-Life 1. Have you?
Yes, okay. I have it.
I
haven't beat it, but I've played a lot of it.
I would like to play Black Mesa. Didn't Black Mesa like come out of early access here recently, or isn't it coming out?
Black Mesa finished recently. Like I think they're done with it.
Yeah,
I may be wrong.
Well, essentially, like if you are a young fan of ours, Half-Life was a very revolutionary PC shooter, and Half-Life 2 was especially revolutionary because it introduced one of the first instances of realistic gravity-based like weight physics. And on top of that, it's a very interesting dystopian sci-fi story. We made fun of it earlier because in Half-Life 1, they're just fucking around with teleportation mechanics, and they open a portal to this fucking hellish alternate reality, and fucked up alien monsters come through. And I played Half-Life 2, which you really don't need to play Half-Life 1 for, because Half-Life 2, you immediately pick up on the fact that you're the only survivor from this horrifying physics experiment gone wrong, and that there's some fucked up suited man that's like a malevolent like influencer in all of this, and there's this weird like hero worship of you as Gordon Freeman, the dude from The Place. And that game has a really good story. I feel like a lot of first-person shooters have struggled with how to tell a story because it's like, okay, do we give your character a voice? Do we show your character talking from a third-person perspective in cutscenes? Or do we have your character speak in first person? Or do we make your character voiceless? If we make your character voiceless, can we really have an enthralling story with good dialogue? And I feel like Half-Life 2 did a really good job of, even though your character never speaks, I still feel realistically involved in everything that's going on, to the point that a lot of times when I play Half-Life 2, I am stupidly talking out loud to the characters because I feel immersed in that story. And for being such an older story, the facial animations are very good and it feels really realistic. And with Half-Life 2, it ended on a weird cliffhanger, so they came out with like a DLC extension of the story in Half-Life 2 Episode 1, and they did it again for Half-Life 2 Episode 2. And Half-Life 2 Episode 2 ends on a really fucking rough cliffhanger of like a major character dying and it being heavily implied that you're going to this location. And this is where it gets kind of fucking complicated because the place that you were supposed to be going had Aperture Science logos on it. Do you remember this?
Mm-hmm.
And
the boat, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that was about the time that Portal 1 and Portal 2 were like, I think Portal 2 was like, I think Portal 1 came out after Half-Life 2, obviously, but like, okay, Portal 1 was in the orange box with all that shit, and then Portal 2 came out later. And, all right, and originally, the implication was that Portal 1 took place in the same universe as Half-Life 2. It honestly overtly states that in Half-Life, or in Portal 1, when it talks about, you know, the world outside and all this stuff. And I think that the direction that they were going in is that this is going to somehow cross over into the events of Half-Life. And I think they played around with it for so long that at some point, somebody at the drawing room table was like, listen, y'all, we can piss in the air all day, but Half-Life 3 is not coming out. So, like, what are we actually going to make Portal 2 about? And so they, like, backpedaled. And they backpedaled to the point of patching Portal 1. I don't know if those of you who played Portal 1 have gone back and done this, but in the original ending of Portal 1, you escape from Aperture Science, and it ends with you seeing the outside and the burning shit around you, and then it fades to black. But in the patched ending, right before Portal 2 came out, they drag your ass back into the lab. So it's clear that, like, Portal 2 was going to take place outside of the lab. Like, you were going to have this portal gun in like an open world outdoor environment. And then they were like, the canon's confusing. So we're just going to put her back in the ground and just tell a portal story. And I was really excited to see where that was going, but I hadn't given up hope on Half-Life 3. I was just like, okay, well, fuck it. You know, it's just not going to have anything to do with Portal. And then we waited and we waited and we waited and we waited, and we waited. And the original writer got pissed off and he leaked the script because he was like, yeah, this game's never coming out. And I still haven't read it because I was like, well, there are people making like their own fan games using this script, so maybe I'll just play one. Have you seen any of those, by the way?
I don't think so.
I saw a demo for one that a guy had made, and it made good sense to me. He had added destructible environments to the game, and I was like, well, that makes sense because whatever the next Half-Life game is has to up the ante in the same way. If Half-Life 2's big thing was physics, what's Half-Life 3's big thing going to be? And so it was like destructible environments, almost akin to Battlefield Bad Company 2. But then there was the recent development, which I'll let you talk about.
What now? What recent development?
The VR development.
Oh, Alex?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's something interesting about that is, well, first of all, let me just say what it is. They came out, or they're coming out with a game called, I guess, is it just Half-Life 2, Alex? Like, what's it actually called?
It's Half-Life Alex.
Half-Life Alex. Okay, yeah. So it's a VR-only game coming out on Steam to promote their VR headset, which I can't recall the name of.
Index,
yes. And ever since they announced it, they have been basically sold out of indexes. Like, you can't fucking buy one right now, and that game comes out in like 3 weeks. So like only certain people are going to be able to play it at this point, because I'm not sure if it's compatible with other headsets. I'm sure it is, because that would be a really weird thing to do if not.
But at the same time, people have done it. Like, there have been games that are exclusive to certain headset. I used to have an Oculus exclusive game for when I was borrowing my nephew's Oculus.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's been sold out for a fucking while now. Like, at least like this time last week when I was reading about it, like, people were like, yeah, you can't find an index anywhere right now, and this game comes out in like 3 weeks, and there's basically been no advertisement or hype or news for it in a while. Like, it's almost like they're sweeping it under the rug. So a lot of people are super worried about it, how it's going to just be shit. But I can't blame them, because, like, you know, we've been waiting for Half-Life 3 for a fucking decade, and now they're just like, here's the game about Alex. It's VR.
I want to really kind of speculate about what their line of reasoning is, because I feel like they knew they could make Half-Life 3 or Half-Life 2 Episode 3 at any moment just using the original engine and just get it over with. But they were like, well, if it's really going to be Half-Life 3, and they had already shot themselves in the foot, and they had already said that, if it's really going to be Half-Life 3, then it's got to have a new engine and it's got to have a new gimmick. Because Half-Life 1 was just a really good motherfucking shooter, and then Half-Life 2 was a really good motherfucking shooter with a revolutionary physics engine. So what in the fuck can we possibly pull out of our ass for 3? And I feel like to make the claim of, hey, we're gonna make a AAA VR first person shooter and you're gonna want to play it. Like, I think that's the ballsiest move they could have possibly made, but I don't know if they can pull it off. Like, if they clearly think they can, but I've played a couple of VR first-person shooter type things, and I still don't think they've resolved the motion problem. Like, does she walk around? Does she do the awkward teleport? Is it just on rails? That's what I really want to know, because everything else I'm looking at looks great.
I think it is on rails.
Yeah, and that's a little sad, but I also understand why it's Half-Life Alyx, because it's kind of like, okay, let's do a proof of concept. Let's do like a prequel game that we can have end with something teasing more Half-Life content. And if this goes well, Half-Life 3, whenever more people have VR headsets, might be a fully VR game. And if it doesn't, whatever, we made a game, we had fun with it. But I am in a hype limbo about this, because on the one hand, I'm like, oh my God, this is fucking amazing. This is so cool. It's in the Half-Life universe. I haven't seen these assets in so long. Her gloves look super fucking cool. They look like some sort of combination of like the gravity gun with the restrictions of VR, you know? But then I'm also sitting here going, how easy would it be for Valve to just be like, oh, we don't make games anymore? Let me just scoop up some assets and throw you this dinky fucking VR game that everybody will cream their jeans over.
Yeah, I think a lot of the issue of 3 not coming out at this point is every day that they wait is not only it building more hype that they will never live up to, but it's also people losing interest because it's never coming out. Like they're in like a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
They really are. And we've talked about this before, about how like previously before this game was announced, we had talked about the only right way to reveal Half-Life 3 at this point would be to go, and you can buy it right now. like there's no more waiting. You've waited long enough. It's on the store right now.
Yeah, like I want Gabe Newell to, like, they don't even have a slot at E3, right? Like he just walks up on the stage, he kicks Phil Xbox in the chest off the stage, right? And then he just slaps, well, I guess Sony wouldn't be there. He just punches Miyamoto in the dick. Just going up there ham, and he's just like, Half-Life 3 right now, go buy it. And then Steam would crash for about a week probably, because they can't even handle sales, let alone this shit.
Yep. Yep. But if I do buy my own VR headset, I do want the Steam one. But the thing is, I'm confused. Expensive. Is it the HTC index? Is that what it is?
I think it's just the Steam index.
Well, that's confusing, because they had done a partnership with HTC to make the Vive, and I thought that was going to be the official Steam thing, but I guess they made their own.
Yeah, I think this one's all in-house, kind of like their controller that they did.
Yeah, and that worked so well.
Yeah, I know this is like the most expensive headset out there. I think it's $1,000.
God damn. Like, I get it. We all want it. But God damn, guys.
Yeah, for real. Like,
I think console price is fair for it. Like, I think like $250 to $300 is like, yeah, that's an investment, but it's an investment that I will possibly do.
Yeah, I could see that too. But just for me personally, like, VR isn't there yet. Yeah. Like, and I don't think it will be there for quite a while. Like, it's still such a fucking meme at the moment. Like, I legitimately would only want VR at the moment for porn.
Yeah.
Like, well, like, I really think VR will eventually change the porn industry in the way that like DVDs did.
Yeah, and I can agree, and I can speak to that firsthand, but I think for me, if we can start getting headsets that have like double the resolution of the one that I used, which would explain the price increase, and I understand, but if it just had like double the resolution of the one I used and wasn't as constricting feeling, because of the cord and because of how boisterous it was on my face, I think that was also a big component in the motion sickness. So if we could deal with that somehow, I think we'd be there. I'd be ready to be fucking with it, because I was almost ready to try and finish that one game, even though I was getting bad motion sick, just because of how fucking cool it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't. I gave up on it. And I may never play this Half-Life Alyx game. But I do hope that it drums up some more interest and possibly gives us some more hope for an actual main series sequel to Half-Life 2 Episode 2. Because
I really hope that's what they're doing, is trying to gauge interest with it again. Because I mean, and with a series like Half-Life, like we've already said, you don't really even need to do that. Like, just come the fuck out with it, and it'll print money. And like, everybody has a grand old time.
Yep. All right. Well, today has been an unusual circumstance. Normally, I skip my stream in order to do the podcast, but I still wanted to do my stream. And if I'm going to be on time, my stream's in about 15 minutes. So I guess that we're probably about ready to wind it down. Chase, you got any projects you're working on that you want to plug?
One fine day, wolf in a purse. No, not really. I'm thinking about making a Final Fantasy VII video that literally no one in this Discord or this channel would give a fuck about, but I'm still considering it. That's about it.
I've been thinking about this today. Do you think that it would be anything like my straight to the point videos? Like, would it be like a guide in that vein, or would it be just something different that is just like, hi, it's me, here's what you do?
Kind of like there's a million fucking videos you can go out there and watch right now on how to beat Ruby and Emerald Weapon, but like they're all really long and not necessarily convoluted, but it's just like they're kind of long and not straight to the point. And I want to make one and be like, all right, look, you need to boot up. It don't matter if you're level 99 or not. I am, but go in here, throw some dasers at this bitch, and then use my exact setup, and he will die. I was like,
fuck yes. Yeah, we should do that, because I feel like right now we've got 2 videos labeled straight to the point that's just like, hey, we don't normally do guides, but here's a guide. So I think you should just make a straight to the point video, and it'd just be like, yeah, every now and then Bro Up does one of these, and it's kind of funny, and I like it.
Yeah, now the like aspect ratio of it's gonna look really weird because I'm playing it on PS4, and it doesn't stretch the game out to my big ass giant TV. So there's like 2 big ass black bars on the sides because it just can't do it.
That's
so
all right.
It might look weird, but I'm probably gonna do it anyway.
Fuck it, let's do it. All right. Well, that's been clubafradio.wave. I really appreciate you guys for coming out. Special thanks to everybody who supports this on Patreon. The Undead Host tier is the one that makes this podcast possible. And so long as people are paying at that tier or higher, we will always run one of these podcasts every month, even if nobody shows up. But again, you can show up and listen to us live. You can send me a message and ask me to read an ad out loud. And if anybody sends me one for this month, I will stitch it in later. But for now, I really need to take a dump. And then later on, I need to edit this podcast down so that I don't sound too much like a fucking asshole. And Scott, if you're listening to this one, I wasn't trying to be mean earlier when I talked about you just buying Star Wars Battlefront because it was Star Wars and it turned out to be shitty. I love you. You should come and guest on our podcast.
Nah, you're an idiot, fam.
No!